ain't good. Little brake boost. Alright, so here we have my 1991 Mazda 626 GT Turbo. This car has 360,000 miles now, and it makes 167 wheel horsepower and 211 foot-pounds of torque, the last dyno, which was about 320,000 miles. So when it was 260,000 miles, it made 170 wheel horsepower and 220 wheel torque. So it hasn't lost much power considering the mileage. And I'm sorry, but there's probably going to be a little bit of wind noise. But anyway, any place to start with a Mazda F2T is going to be a cone filter intake on the vane airflow meter, a downpipe and O2 housing helps, but even the stock O2 housing with just a 2.5 inch or 2.25 inch downpipe with a straight exhaust with a straight blow-through muffler, no cat or anything, and a boost controller will net you the power that I'm making right now, which is the limit of the factory ECU, which is 170 wheel horsepower, 220 wheel torque on a healthy engine. Just that's going to be your average. So those mods make it a very fun daily. It's as fast as a stock WRX probably. So I mean, for a $550 car with 40 bucks in mods, basically, not bad. So the next step from here would be to do a Walbro 255 fuel pump, which you just, my car's a mess, you won't be able to see it, but you just pull up the rear seats and there's an access hatch under the rear seat. The ECU is back behind this kick panel. Probably won't be able to see it there behind this panel right next to your clutch pedal. Unplug the ECU, pull it out, put one that's got a chip installed, either Probinator or Zombie chip would be the two I would recommend, or a JB chip even, which will eliminate the boost cut and allow you to run up to 16 to 17 pounds safely, but anything much over 15, you're just blowing hot air. It'll pick up maybe 1 or 2 horsepower, so it's not even worth the extra stress on the turbo. But that would be the next mod to do, would be a chipped ECU and a Walbro 255 or 190 liter per hour fuel pump. But when you inevitably start turning it up further, a Walbro 255 is good insurance. So with the boost controller, exhaust, cone filter intake, Walbro 255, and chipped ECU at 15 pounds of boost on a healthy engine, you should be sitting at between 185 and 200 wheel horsepower and 280 to 300 wheel torque. And that's plenty to start scooting. So the next two inherent weak points are going to be your factory turbo and your spider gears in your differential. Sudden shock load of 300 foot-pounds of torque on fast shifts can break the differential pin, roll pin that holds it in place, which will drop the diff pin and spit the spider gears right out of the tranny case. Stock turbos don't live very long over 15 to 17 PSI. Like anything over 15, you're playing with fire because they're way over speed and you're making hot air at that point. Anything over 13 pounds on NA pistons, same thing. If you are prepared to stay stock turbo, I wouldn't recommend going much over like 14 pounds because they tend to live fairly decently at that power level. Alright, so now you've got the limit of the stock turbo, and you want to go for a little bit more. I would recommend having a T3 flange and 38 millimeter wastegate, or a V-band if you want, welded onto your factory exhaust manifold so that you can upgrade to a T3 frame turbo. And then I would recommend an adjustable fuel pressure regulator so you can up the fuel pressure, and then a good 38 mil external wastegate. With a TL4B50 trim on 16 pounds with non-turbo high compression pistons, I made 267 wheel horsepower and 262 wheel horsepower and 271 foot-pounds of torque, untuned on stock injectors and ECU at 55 psi base fuel pressure. So that's about the limit of the stock ECU with a chip right there, like without doing extra injectors or whatnot, but that's kind of unreliable. So The next step from here is either going to be a JB440 chip with Supra 440 low impedance injectors, or it's going to be, I chose to go the route of standalone. So when I did that, I did a DIY PMP originally, but now as you can see, I have a Megasquirt 2 version 3.57 and RX-7 545cc purple top high impedance injectors at 56 psi base fuel pressure. So with that same setup on 50 psi fuel pressure and 26 pounds on a TO4B50 trim with high compression, or with the low compression pistons back in it, I did 329 wheel horsepower and 371 foot-pounds of torque. I am now on 25 psi on this turbo with more fuel pressure, 56 psi, stretching these injectors a little bit further. When I bumped the fuel pressure up, I went from 92% duty cycle to 70% duty cycle, or 89% duty cycle, sorry, to 70%. And now I'm back up to 89-90% duty cycle at 25 pounds on the big turbo. So that's probably in the neighborhood of 300, and I'm going to guess 350 to 370 wheel horsepower, to be realistic. And that is about the limit of reliability on factory trans gears and everything like that, because once I do the 1000cc injectors or whatever I decide to go with, and I turn this car all the way up and, you know, do 30 pounds, 32, 35 pounds, whatever I decide to do, that'll be north of 400 wheel horsepower, and it will be an absolute fuck ton of torque, and it will break everything. So if you want to get to that point, be prepared to spend a ton of money. Although I do have a factory long block in this car other than valve springs and ring gap and bearings. So lots of potential with these engines, but they're not cheap, and you're going to break a lot of shit along the way learning. So in conclusion, I guess basically the moral of the story is there's a lot of different ways you can make a lot of different power levels. Stock turbo, you're going to break differentials. Big turbo, you're going to blow head gaskets unless you do what I suggested, you know, and have a good way to tune the car, or at least monitor the air-fuel ratio. They don't like being overheated. I mean, there's just little things where you're going to make mistakes along the way. I chose to learn the hard way on most stuff and not follow a crowd, and do what other people have done. So it helped with blowing up shit a lot. So be prepared to do that. But I mean, you can make 400 wheel horsepower with these if you're willing to take it far enough, but not very many people do, because it starts to get really expensive. So if you want to spend a lot of money on a car that nobody is going to like, as I said before, they're the one for you. But they're torque monsters, and they'll always put a smile on your face when they run. All right, some updates. I got a new battery for the Probe because I needed the one out of here for that car because it took a shit. Everything is good on this car now. Engine bay wise, it's sitting on 25 pounds of boost. Last night, after 4 years of having my front Yonaka coilovers in, my buddy finally came and changed out my rear coilovers for me because I couldn't get these knuckle bolts out down here. Them suckers were stuck in there. Of course, they just came right out for him, so that was nice. But yeah, rear Yonaka coilovers are in. I'm waiting to get my tires back, or my wheels back, which now will have W-rated tires on them. So I will have tires rated for 170 miles an hour all the way around on this car. And we'll be doing some high-speed runs in her, hopefully. So stay tuned. So after 4 years of the front Yonaka coilovers being in, the rears are now in, although I don't have it as low because I want the weight shifted forward. But you can see coilovers are in. I now have W-rated tires all the way around, so I can go 160 plus. I like the stance of the car right where it's at, really good. I don't need it to be lower in the rear. I don't want it rubbing all the time. And that'll shift the weight forward some, so that's good. Keep the weight over the front tires. Back end is gutted, so I do want it brand new top hats, mounting hardware, everything's all brand new in the rear. Still have the 5 Zig and FN01 RCs. So yeah, this baby's ready to fly now. Put a new battery in it. I was gonna get like an Optima or something, but they're so freaking heavy. And honestly, this was so cheap that I didn't even mind. Just a Walmart Superstart or whatever the hell they're called, Everstart. It's got a 2-year warranty. It's freaking lightweight. I mean, there's hardly anything to it. So it'll do for the time being until I relocate the battery to the back, and that's going to be a bunch of extra cables, so I'm going to want to get a lightweight battery. So we'll see when we get to that point. But radiator's all polished up. It's dirty right now, but it's all polished up and looking good. Upper intercooler pipe, intake, intercooler, everything shined up. Just got to clean it off. Got to get my other valve cover ready and cut the hood so that I can fit the 90-degree AN fitting off of the one on my other valve cover I have inside, which is 10 AN like these are, so I can run my lines from the valve cover to the catch can. These were set up before I made that when I was in school for welding, so I just had 12 AN breathers instead of having it ran to a catch can. But I do need to run that to a catch can because I'm at a power level now where if I have an engine failure, it's going to blow shit everywhere. So I definitely want to have it set up a little safer for the track. I have had a turbo failure with this exhaust, and it did not blow oil all over my tires. The exhaust velocity is enough to carry it out past the strip seam of the car. Didn't even get oil down the side of the car or on the rear tires, so I think I'll be good there as well. So hopefully got some races coming up, Turbo Buick, that Type R again, and then a couple other things, so stay tuned.